Visualization, what is it and how can you use it? You've probably heard of, visualization is really important, mental imagery, mental rehearsal, whatever it's called. But I could never find, when I was shooting, a place to really understand how I can use it, what I should be thinking when I'm doing the visualization. So I want to show you how to do visualization, what you should be thinking about, and how you can use it in your training program. So that is exactly what the video today is going to be all about. So when it comes to visualization, there really isn't much resistance from pretty much anyone. Everyone agrees that it's very useful. Everyone agrees that, they should be doing it as part of their training, and it can help, them shoot and their training and competition preparation and stuff like that. But a lot of people get stuck as to, when they're doing it, it doesn't feel right, or they can't imagine the correct parts of the shot, or they find it really difficult and stuff like that. So I wanted to touch on some of that today and kind of guide you through how you can do that. So the first thing that you should think about really when it comes to visualization is it's not taking time away from your training. So people think that visualization means that, I've only got 3 hours to shoot, for example. If I spend 10 minutes visualizing, that's 10 minutes I can't shoot. But you shouldn't think of it like that. Visualizing is as important, if not more important, than actually training sometimes. So especially the better you get, the more advanced you get, the longer you've been shooting, how many years you've been shooting, how many arrows you've shot, the more important visualization becomes. Especially if you do visualization before a training session and after a training session, for example, the benefit you can get is much bigger than just what you would look from the 10 minutes that you've done. If you do it before the session, 10 minutes before the session is really focusing you on what you want to do in the session. So for then the next 2 hours, the next 3 hours, your session, you're going to get much more out of it. Then if you do some afterwards, you're going to be able to review the session, see what you did well, see what you need to improve on tomorrow, that kind of thing. So you're going to get more out of your review of the session, and then you'll get more out of the next session the next day as well. So don't think of it as time taken away from your training. Think of it as actually like a multiplier. It's if you've only got 3 hours to train, doing a little bit of visualization before and after turns that 3 hours into 4.5 hours, because it's much more effective time that you're spending doing things, and you're running through your process in the right way. So think of it like that. Now also, when you think of maybe extreme sports, sports where there's a high risk of danger, you would definitely agree that visualization is super important. You wouldn't think about learning the skill without visualizing. But because in archery you can shoot a shot and it's a bad shot and nothing bad happens, people think, I don't need to visualize really, I've just done a bad shot, whatever, it doesn't matter. But the thing is that people in, athletes in other sports where there's high risk, maybe, ski jump, maybe, things like half pipe, stuff like that, there's a high degree of risk there. You don't want to be, and you can't be thinking about learning the skill when you're trying to spin through the air really quick and do some sort of skill or something. You don't have time to think about all that. So you have to program it in your mind beforehand by visualizing what you're going to do. Actually, the shot is the same in terms of when you're doing the actual shot, it's quite quick, and it needs to be quite quick. If you're thinking step by step exactly what you need to do, then yeah, you're not gonna land on your face, and you're not gonna break any bones or anything, but it's not going to be as effective, and you're going to be wasting time and trying to think, okay, I do this here, this here, this here. Whereas it's much better to visualize what you're going to do before you do it, and then execute it and see whether it was good or not. That's a much more effective way of training, much more effective way of learning, and you're using the visualization to its best effect there. So we agree, obviously, now that visualization is important, but when can you use it and how can you use it? So let me talk about a little bit when you can use visualization, why it's really important. So, for example, you're a beginner, you're learning a new skill. You can improve how quickly you learn that skill by visualizing what you're going to do. For example, if a new instructor has said you want to stand on the line, they've told you how to stand with your stance, so you visualize walking onto the line, getting your stance, then starting the rest of your shot. You can just visualize this tens, hundreds of times without any physical effort, but that means when you then go, onto the shooting line, you walk onto the shooting line, the next time you do your beginner session, it's automatic. You know what your stance is, you don't have to think about it, then your energy is available to think about something else, and your focus is available to think about something else. So that's one way you can use it in kind of sit down sessions to learn a skill. So visualization isn't just mental training, it is actually technique training as well. So don't think, like I said, you're taking time away from technique. Visualization is technique training as well, and you can use it to learn technique. Another example would be, for example, an experienced archer really trying to learn or improve maybe their release. Maybe they know that when they come into anchor, they come off here, they allow this to collapse a bit and then they shoot. So you can visualize tens, hundreds of times how you would come in and keep moving this round and what the feeling of that would be, how it would feel. You'd feel the string pressure increasing on the face slightly, you'd feel the elbow coming around the body. On release, you'd feel the release explode through backwards. Those feelings are great to imprint what you want to do with that part of your shot. So that's another way you can do it. And these are kind of sit down sessions where you might be at a coffee shop or something. You can just visualize this, 6 arrows, 12 arrows, 18 arrows, whatever. So that's one thing there. Two other amazing times when you can use this is in between arrows and in between ends at a competition. So in training as well, you can double or triple the amount of arrows you shoot just by focusing on the visualization. Imagine you shoot 100 arrows. If you visualize your shot before the arrow, before you're getting ready to shoot, as you're taking the arrow out of the quiver, you visualize what you're gonna do. You're gonna make sure you keep your core, you're gonna make sure you come in and expand round, visualize your shot, then you go to do the shot and you execute it, like I said before, then after the shot, you review it and visualize the correct way again. So by doing this, you've basically tripled the number of shots you're doing mentally. You've increased how much you're practicing because you're focusing on, the shot 3 times. And if the shot was not great, then the one before and the one after, you can control them, you're visualizing it, those are good. So you've still got more good imprints in your memory than maybe the shot that you did that wasn't ideal. So this is really great to do. You can do it on every single arrow to program what you're going to do. Like I said, maybe that half pipe or some technical skill in a sport where there's high risk, they would visualize before they do the skill and then execute it. You can visualize between every single arrow what you're going to do. This includes maybe if you're going to aim off a competition, you're going to aim in the red. So you visualize, I'm going to aim in the red, execute my normal shot. Then you come up and go, okay, shoot, nice, that was good. Visualize the next one, on to the next arrow. That's where you can use it. So it's really good for that as well. Now, the other thing you can use visualization for is training a new thought pattern or, training contingency planning, training how you're going to react in certain situations. So maybe you know that when it's windy, typically you end up getting frustrated in a competition and you end up not shooting as well as you think you can, even considering the wind. So a great example of visualization is, you've got a competition coming up this weekend. It might be windy. It often is windy at that field. You can visualize during the week what you're going to do. If it's windy, how are you going to deal with it? You visualize going to the field. You visualize starting your practice. How are you going to get your sight centered and get your feeling of your shot in windy conditions? Focus and think about how exactly you're going to do that. Visualize yourself going onto the line, shooting your shot, feeling the wind. Visualize yourself noticing that you might be getting frustrated with the wind, and then mentally think, okay, I can notice myself getting frustrated. Now, how am I going to focus back onto what's important? Actually visualize yourself noticing the thought pattern and correcting it with a more useful one. This is really, really useful way to use visualization and can really improve, in particular, your competition experiences, scoring experience. If you notice, for example, you shoot 5 arrows, and if they're 5 good arrows, you might get a bit excited and lose focus on the last arrow. Visualize this. Visualize shooting 1 arrow. Good, nice. Visualize 2nd arrow, 3rd arrow, 4th arrow, 5th arrow. Then on the last one, visualize, realize, focus, and see yourself in your mind's eye, getting a bit excited, losing focus, and then going, no, okay, I'm going to focus on my shot process and just do my shot process, and then the arrow will go in the middle if I do this correctly. And then visualize yourself focusing on this, executing it, and the arrow going in the middle. This is a great way to use visualization. Now, how do you actually visualize? What do you do? and what happens if you can't visualize specific things. So a really common thing that a lot of people end up saying is, I can't visualize very well for one shot. There's certain parts I can visualize walking onto the shooting line, I can visualize putting the arrow into the bow, but as soon as I get to maybe lifting the bow, so I can visualize putting my hand in the grip and hook on the string and stuff like that, as soon as I visualize lifting the bow, it kind of goes blank, kind of not able to imagine what I'm doing, and then I kind of skip that part and get to anchor, and then I've shot the shot, but I don't know how I get from like point A to point B, and it kind of just happens in my mind's eye, and I shoot the shot and think, okay, was that visualization, was it not? So that's a super common one, and what that means, if you can't visualize a certain part, it means you don't know it enough. It means you haven't learnt it. Treat it like a film. If you're recording a film and you forget part of the script, it doesn't mean that it's pointless recording the film anymore. It doesn't mean that visualization isn't useful. It means you just forgot part of the script and you haven't learnt it yet. So it's actually been useful because it's told you what you didn't know. So if you go to visualize and there's a part that you can't remember, it goes blank, you can't really visualize it, you can't see it clearly when you're picturing it in your mind's eye, that's actually great, because that's told you much earlier than it might have taken you years to realize you didn't know that before. You thought you just went from here and just lifted the bow, but how exactly do you lift the bow the same each time? What is the feeling you do to get it the same? How do you get, for some people it might be from getting from setup to anchor. How do you get from setup to anchor the same each time? So if you can't visualize specific parts, if you get all through your shot and get to anchor, full draw, but you don't know how you expand through the clicker, you just kind of expand and then it shoots in your visualization, then that means you don't know what your process for expansion is. This is really, really useful and can really have a massive impact if you then start learning through and thinking, okay, I'm going to try this now. In my visualization, I'm going to come up and I get to my anchor and I get to real full draw, and then my expansion, I'm going to focus on just one thing. I'm just going to focus on moving the elbow around the body and then shooting. Just going to focus on that. Then the next time I physically shoot, that's what I'm going to focus on, see how it works. This can have a really big impact. Maybe for the same, issue or the same thing there, you might think, okay, I'm not going to focus on the elbow. I'm just going to focus on, I get to anchor and once I'm at real full draw, I'm just going to focus on increasing the amount of pressure on the string onto the face. So I get to real full draw and I just think of increasing the pressure and shoot. Maybe it's that. So you can use these as particular ways that you expand through the shot. When you talk to the top archers, every single one of them knows every part of their shot. For example, some of the top archers might just say, oh, when I'm at full draw, I just focus on moving my hands apart. That might seem really simple, and it might seem kind of like, okay, well, how do you get through the clicker though? But that is their process. They know that once they get to here, the feeling they want is just that they just move the hands apart. This hand and this hand just moves apart, and that's their expansion. That expands through the clicker, and then they shoot. So they've got that, and they know that's how they get through the clicker. So this is where it's really, really useful. Another thing when it comes to visualization is someone might say, okay, I could visualize one shot, 2 shots, 3 shots, but when it starts to get really hard, I kind of lose concentration after a few shots, and I can't really get to, visualizing a whole end or something. It's just really, really tricky. Don't worry, I was in exactly the same position. That was me probably for years, and I just thought, visualization's not for me. It's not very useful because, I can do a few shots, but it doesn't really work past that. But this was just a focus issue. I wasn't able to focus properly on what I was doing, and I could do a couple and just not maintain it. So this actually translated into a competition as well. And in competition, I would very often lose the feeling of what I was doing. And I wouldn't keep this feeling for long enough. I'd get distracted by outcome or wind or something like that. So this was actually very useful to improve as well. So start off slow. If you can only do 3 arrows, just do 3 arrows. Sit down, visualize 3 arrows. That's it, done for the day. Slowly increase how many you can do and really work on that. It's the same as if you were physically shooting. You wouldn't just expect to be able to shoot 50 arrows straight away if you've never shot before. You wouldn't expect to go from 50 arrows to 200. So visualize and gradually increase this as you would, a normal training plan for gym training or shooting training. So maybe do 3 arrows today. Next week, do 6 arrows a day. Next week, do 10 arrows a day, and just increase this. And the more you can do, the better, obviously, but there is a limit and you do need to rest. So just play around with it, but trust that it is doable. And sometimes you end up sitting there, trust me, you end up sitting there for 5-10 minutes and you visualize 2 arrows. I've done it before, but that's fine. Next day, go to the next day, do the same thing. It might take a while, but you'll have a breakthrough, and maybe one day you'll sit there and do 15 arrows visualization and you think, wow, that was amazing. I did 15 arrows and I really learned some parts of my technique. And then the next day, just keep working at it. And it's definitely a really, really good skill to have. Probably one of the most important skills to have. So when it comes to what you're actually visualizing, what you want to focus on is internal feelings and what you can control, obviously. So if, for example, I'm working on, like I said before, this expansion part of the shot, I want to focus in my visualization. I would imagine, just like in my mind's eye in a movie, I would imagine walking onto the shooting line. I would imagine then setting my feet. I would imagine getting the arrow. I could feel the knock of the arrow, get the arrow out of the bow, out of the quiver, into the bow. I could hear the clip of the knock on the string. I can feel the bow hand in the grip where it would normally be. I can feel the hand on the string, lifting the bow, setting both hands, then opening and raising. I can feel what the motion is that I would do to open the bow. I could feel the connection to the elbow, keeping that as I lift. And then when I get to the top, then rotating and keeping this, leading the connection here, leading the movement, getting to the setup. I could see the sight getting somewhere near the gold now. I could then draw into anchor, feel the shoulder coming round and getting into that real full draw position as I come into anchor, real full draw, then expand, focus on the elbow coming around the body. And that would be, you're focusing on the feelings internally, and you can also see what's happening. So in the same way that, during training you would be focusing on the gold, I'm not focusing on the sight here in the visualization, I'm focusing on the gold, what I can see. So, and I'm keeping the focus internal on what I can control, what I can feel. So that's really, really important as well. So I just wanted to walk through that kind of visualization to kind of explain what you would feel. And if you can't feel a certain area, or it doesn't feel natural yet, like I said, it just takes time. Keep practicing at it and keep doing it, and also be patient. Note down what you don't know, note down where it goes blank, and then when you go to shoot, work on these areas and think, okay, how do I actually do this? Then you can practice it in your visualization. Doing these two together will massively, massively improve how quickly you can, progress with your technique. So it's really, really useful. So that's been quite an in-depth look at visualization. I hope you found that video useful. As always, be sure to smash that like button and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'll put the links to social media below, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.